Hello, welcome to another episode of the Book Brilliant Podcast. This is Matt Bechtel, and today my guest is author Ben Milligan. He has written the book By Water, Beneath the Walls, The Rise of the Navy SEALs. What makes Ben interesting is that he was actually on the SEAL teams himself. But Ben is a true historian. So his work really speaks for itself here. He was on the SEAL teams, but man, this guy did a lot of research. And special operations is a really fascinating thing to dive into. There's a lot. Special operations means a lot of different things. Army Rangers, Green Berets, Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, of course, Marine Raiders, Marine Recon, Delta Force. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing off the top of my head. What I like about this book, though, is that when you read it, it's really not just a history of the Navy SEALs. He goes into the history of the Army Rangers, of the Marine Raiders, which is interesting because recently I've been trying to figure out exactly what the Marine Raiders are and what's the difference between a Marine Raider, and a Navy SEAL. He goes into that history here, and it is it's a lot more fascinating than I thought, and it's confusing in the sense of how the government would start these programs and then dissolve these programs, then bring them back, and it's pretty wild. Ben was really humble. I made the comment, and I believe I've heard others make the comment to him about, I'm sure being a Navy SEAL helped you, write this book. And what I like about the way he kind of handles that question is I almost feel like he answers in a way where he doesn't want to discourage historians who haven't served in the military from writing. He kind of says, but being a Navy SEAL also had, its obstacles as well with being a writer. I thought he was pretty humble about it. It is 100% interesting that he was on the SEAL teams himself. I mean, he's won medals in war, but his work is so good, that if you were to read this and you knew nothing about the author, you would think like, wow, this guy's a heck of a historian who did a lot of research. So really, hats off to Ben. He did a really good job with this book. If you're interested in special operations, if you're interested in military history, if you're interested in the Navy SEALs, any of those things, you're really going to like this book. You're going to walk away with it. Again, I've been going through this Vietnam phase. I'm highly interested in the Korean War. I know almost nothing about it, to be honest. And this book covered all of those things. So you really walk away with a good understanding of a lot of different things. This is an important book. I believe Jocko Willink said it's a must read for anybody in the SEAL teams. Ben, you did a good job. Let's check out this episode. All right, Ben Milligan, it is great to have you on. We're here today to, of course, talk about your brand new book, which I have read, By Water, Beneath the Walls. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. So I wanted to kind of start off by, I guess, kind of telling, first of all, a funny story. When I was thinking about in preparation of this, what movie I wanted to watch this weekend, my go-to was going to be Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen, because I figured there's no better truthful movie to show what the Navy SEALs are really like. And I settled instead on Moneyball, which I know is one of your favorite movies. So that was the first time I've ever seen it, and it was quite a fantastic movie. So
that's a good one.
For that recommendation. Yeah, absolutely.
But don't knock Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs, that's a great one. That's the gold standard.
Is that what inspired you to join as well?
No, I was not. So I told my parents that I wanted to be a Navy SEAL when I was, I think, 12 years old, and they didn't know what it was. The movie, I can't remember if the movie had come out yet, but I was not allowed to see it. I wasn't allowed to see it for years. I managed to, I can't remember the circumstances, but when I finally did see it, all it did was just confirm everything. It didn't motivate it. It just confirmed it. So.
That's amazing. I love it. Do you hear every other day, does somebody come up to you and tell you the story of how they almost were going to join the SEALs and become a SEAL?
No, not every day. No, I mean, I guess for, the type of, the guys that, are my age group, the movie like Top Gun is was a big influence for a lot of the guys that joined the Navy, during when did that come out? Late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, late 80s, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think young men that were that would have normally been interested in joining the Marine Corps, joining the Rangers, or something like that. When the movie Navy SEALs came out, I think everybody just started to think, I don't know when it became common knowledge that BUDS was the hardest training course that the U.S. military had, or I don't know who was the first person to start that. But I think it gripped a lot of young men, and everybody wanted to sort of test their mettle. And all the guys that I've come in contact with that have, said something similar, like the reason they didn't do it is always because of the water. Nobody likes the water. Even even SEALs don't like the water.
Man, I remember talking to a recruiter in high school, and I had a Navy SEAL pamphlet at my house. My mom was like, "Don't even think about it." And I remember I read Marcus Luttrell's book when I was like 14 or 15, and I was like, "Dude, this is what I want to do." And I remember one day I read The Dirt by Motley Crue when I was like 15 or 16, and I was like, "Oh man, this is kind of a tough career choice. Do I want to be a Navy SEAL or do I want to be a rock star? I guess I don't know." And I remember looking at the pamphlet and seeing how wet and sandy those guys were, and I was like, maybe I should try music. Maybe that would be a better career path. But I don't know, man. When I look back, I do wish I would have, done some kind of service with the military. But so thank you for your service, and thank you to everybody.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Who's listening? Who has done that, man?
Well, what I always say is there's lots of ways to serve your country. You don't have to join the military or do something like that. You can. Just being a good citizen is enough almost these days. So, so don't beat yourself up about not being in the military. I've known plenty of people in the military that weren't the best. So,
well, I appreciate you saying that, man. Man, this book was great because my brother-in-law is actually in the Army right now. He's stationed in Fort Knox, and I spent time on Fort Knox, which is my first time ever on a military base this past year. And I had so many questions about different aspects of the service. Mm-hmm. And what this book is great is not only does it kind of talk about the origins of the Navy SEALs, but it answered questions for me that I had about the Marine Raiders, which I didn't even know was a unit until 6 months ago, talking to a Marine who was telling me about the Raiders. The chapter on the Rangers is pretty fascinating, just the origin story of them and their missions were mind-blowing. It was like, if somebody were to tell you the story of if you were one of those guys in those small units and what they did, and if you met that guy at a bar and he told you the story, there's no way you'd believe him, and so these stories are absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, they're larger than life, and I didn't. I don't think I really discovered this history so much as I just reminded people of it. I think a lot of there have been plenty of books written about the Marine Corps Raiders, plenty of books written about the Army Rangers. I just don't think folks have they've applied any level of scrutiny to these stories and tried to understand what they meant or what their how their legacy actually funneled itself into something else. All of these units were created. They were all committed to action, and then each one, or towards the end of each of their services, they invariably met with some sort of disaster that prompted their branch of service to disband them. For anybody who's just reading the history, the legacy stops there. It's over. It doesn't lead to anything else. Or in the case of the Army Rangers, it leads to something else, but it leads to something else after a long period of time. After the Rangers are disbanded in 45, they come back in 50, and then they're disbanded again in 51, and they're not reconstituted again until 1974. But what was really neat, the thing that I probably had the most fun learning about in the book was just how the creation of these units, the disbandments of these units, it didn't necessarily lead to dead ends or just a broken history in the history of these individual units. It the legacies led to something completely unpredictable, and that was the SEAL teams. And I always say the SEAL teams, they didn't create themselves, and they would not exist had it not been for the false starts of these other units.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't understand, even reading it, I just couldn't believe it, how they would be kind of disbanded and then brought back and disbanded. I don't know, that was kind of mind-blowing for me. And, your time in the SEALs, I absolutely think that it helped your story writing. I think being able to kind of put yourself somewhat in somebody's shoes like that absolutely helps make the story that much better. I know
to some degree. I don't think I needed to. You could have written this book and not have been a former SEAL. I think there's plenty of people out there who have that definitely have the jobs. There's a ton of talent out there that's writing this kind of history. I think the one thing that I had probably a leg up on is that I had some sort of sense of what the SEAL teams were.
Yeah.
If to an outsider, the SEALs can be, they're a lot of things. They're the maritime special operations component, and they're responsible for doing all sorts of missions, under the water and above the water. What I think I probably had a better sense of than somebody coming at this history without the background is that I knew where the bias of the SEAL teams were, like at least during the period of service that I served, we were completely preoccupied with land operations, with direct action, with commando operations, with assault, and that contradiction is ultimately what prompted me to do this in the first place. So, I think, it's helpful to have been in combat. I know what it's like to be shot at. I know what it sounds like. I know what it's like to be ready to go, or to go on an important mission or something like that. I know how you feel, but you can't. That experience is it's the 90% of the iceberg that you're not writing about. It's informing what you're writing about, but it's not necessarily explicitly there on the page.
Yeah. Do you think that being a SEAL had helped you get access to certain people for interviews, or kind of build trust with people?
Yeah, it's in some ways. I know in the early days of the research, there were the one institution that I was constantly going to for research material. I used 5 principal places to do my research: the National Archives of Maryland, invaluable resource; the Army Military History Center in Carlisle; the Marine Corps Archive in Quantico; the UDT SEAL Museum, and then the Naval Heritage and History Center at the Navy Yard. And of all those institutions, probably the one that's hardest to get into, in part by virtue of its location on a military base, is the Naval Heritage and History Center. Not only that, but a few years preceding, when I started my research, they had a horrible active shooter incident, which really locked the base down. They're very preoccupied with security. So they were often, even in the beginning of my research, often reluctant to let folks have access to their material. So. And my agent at the time was Jim Hornfisher. He was a naval historian of his own right. And he was researching his book, The Fleet at Flood Tide, and he couldn't get into the Navy Yard archives.
Jeez.
Which, I mean, if Jim Hornfisher, one of the preeminent naval historians in the country, can't gain access to it, then I don't know who could. So we hatched a scheme to together, say that I was, Jim was my researcher, that I was there to do research. I said I was writing. I was perfectly honest about what I was doing. I was writing a history of the SEAL teams, and I wanted to have access. And they said they weren't having anybody but active duty. So as long as you wear your uniform, you can come in and do all the research that you want. And they begrudgingly said that my research assistant could come too.
Nice. That's nice of you.
Well, it was nice, but when I got in there, all the archivists, they realized who this guy was, and by the end of the day, I think everyone had cycled through at some point to get his autograph. Wow. So, but yeah, so aside from that, I think when you would call someone, it did it maybe help break the ice a little bit to let them know that whether they were a Ranger or a former Green Beret or a former SEAL. I think there's a level of trust, that you can establish by saying that. But there's also a little bit of, there's some skepticism too. I mean, the one thing that you notice when you see, two frogmen, meet each other for the first time is they're trying to get a sense of each other. Like, who is this guy? Is he a real deal? There's so many people out there who are claiming to have been, former special operations or something like that. It can also help put your guard up. So lots of historians all over the country are, making introductions and getting interviews with people and getting access to their, closets full of records and stuff. And they don't have to have, been a former whatever to have done it. They just oftentimes need to, be polite and respectful and most importantly, interested. I think most people out there, they're more than happy to tell the story of their parent or their friend. I think the folks that you're most reluctant to talk to are the people that are you're asking them about themselves. Bob Gallagher, who was one of the principal characters of my second to last chapter, he's a legend in the SEAL teams, and it took me forever to track him down. Weeks and weeks of cold calling, and one dead end after another. But finally one day, I got the right number. I had a sense that this was the right number. I set, I had all of my research material out. I had all my questions ready. I had headphones in, ready to type up his answers, knowing full well that I'm not sure if this guy's going to talk. He answers the phone, asks who I am. I told him I'm, former SEAL writing a book about the SEAL team. Would love to, hear his story. They hung up.
Oh no.
It's all right. I talked to so many people about him. I read his mail. The most important thing when you're researching is, to get the records that are contemporaneous to the time. So you're always looking for those, the letters that were written as close to the incident, or as close to the time of the incident happening. You learn to be somewhat, skeptical about memory. So if I interviewed a World War II guy, you got to take what their memory with a bit of a grain of salt. Same with Korea. When you start interviewing folks from Vietnam, that's when you're really starting to get good memories, detailed memories. You don't have a sense. The individual's not going to have a great sense of dates. Unless they're autistic or something like that. But they do have a good sense of chronology. We all have that, even when we get far removed from something, they can put stuff in context that, sometimes the documents can't. So sorry to go on that long tangent.
It's all good. It brings me, it makes me have multiple questions, man. Were you ever inspired by like Robert, I don't know how to say his last name right. Robert Caro?
Caro?
Yeah.
The author of the LBJ books.
Yeah.
I've never read him. I know who he is. And I've listened to his interviews on, Fresh Air. I don't. If you've read them and you recommend them, I'll check them out. But I mean, I definitely like. I mean, like you, I live by books. I live by and for them. So I mean,
yeah. Well, the reason why I mentioned him was because in your other interviews and stuff, you just kind of reminded me of the work that he does. I mean,
really?
10 years on a book, he does that, if not more. And he's got a book called Working. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this one, but I think
I have. I actually listened to a podcast of him talking about it. That's interesting.
Yeah. But, just so thorough, and same thing with those Lyndon Johnson books. And he talks about the different things and just the Hail Marys that sometimes work out just to get in touch with somebody. And so with how detailed and thorough your book is, I had wondered if he was an inspiration to you at all. So that's interesting.
Not Caro in particular, but plenty of authors like him. I mean, one thing that I was always trying to do when I was writing and researching is, and it's hard to do because whenever you're at least for me, whenever I was starting on a chapter or deep into the writing of a chapter, I always wanted to make sure that I was reading a good amount of secondary accounts of the time that of the event that I'm writing about. And you're gonna that helps you in a couple of ways. I mean, it just gives you gives you a ton of context, but it also keeps you from missing some huge thing that being so focused on a small topic you could easily miss if you're not bringing the aperture back. But the other thing that you're doing, or that I always wanted to do, is I always wanted to read good writers. So I mean, I was always cycling through, even if I didn't have the time or the energy to pick up a new book. I was either rereading favorite books or books that I knew to be excellent. Just to not necessarily for inspiration, but for actual lessons. I mean, if you're reading Barbara Tuchman, you're learning not just incredible writing, and incredible sentence structure, and how to excite your reader with details, but you're learning how to plot simultaneous storylines. It's just incredibly practical. Or if you read C.V. Wedgwood or something like that, these are authors that have been dead for years, but I mean the work that they did, like whenever I was about to do like a character portrait or give somebody's backstory or something like that, I would go back through favorite character portraits that other writers have done. Back to the 30 Years' War, back to reading Shelby Foote's Civil War or David McCullough, or I go on and on. There's no list of talent out there.
Yeah. Well, I know you had said that there was like 3 or 4 books that you would kind of read on repeat as what you wanted to somewhat structure this like. And there's one book that you even kind of outlined. Are you willing to share what those books were that you used for inspiration?
No, absolutely. There were 3 books that I was reading significant parts of. One was Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman. Nice. Which is a single month in the First World War, probably one of the greatest history books of all time. The other was Peter the Great by Robert Massey, which is one of the books I read as a young man. And reading that book, reading Guns of August, I actually read Guns of August while I was in Iraq. I think I read at least a significant part of Peter the Great while I was deployed as well. But reading those 2 books and seeing the what they were able to do with those stories, and see just recognize how hooked I was in reading them and how drawn through the story I was like, I have to do this at some point in my life. Yeah. The other was Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, a modern writer, but I mean, I don't know anybody that tells such a captivating story.
Yeah, I've got that right behind me. There we go.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
And that's a book that I wouldn't just read, I would listen to. listening to books, I think, is invaluable. But the book that I used for structure was Barbara Tuchman's Bible and Sword, which is it's a book about the relationship between Britain and Palestine, and it asks a simple question, which is, how did Britain come to write the Balfour Declaration? And using that one question, she establishes an endpoint to her book. The writing of the Balfour Declaration, the establishment of the mandate in Palestine, and from there, she has to, she backs it up. Where does this relationship start? Where does this relationship between these two countries start? And then she takes, chapter by chapter, these little episodes, and I read that book, I don't know how many times, just to chart how she blocked these chapters. Like they're not even chapters as much as they are just miniature books. And by reading each of these books, by the end of it, you've got this incredible mosaic of that pulls all these threads together. But it also it's a great way to not get or using that sort of template. I was able to block out a lot of extraneous stuff. Like if I had sat down to write a comprehensive history of naval special warfare, the SEAL teams or something, there would have been nothing to help me decide which episodes to pick. Yeah. I would have just, I'm interested in telling the story of, the lone survivor story, or Extortion 17, or Bin Laden raid, or, this event in the 80s, or, this event in Vietnam. I mean, how do you pick if you don't have, if you don't, plant a flag and, drive yourself toward that known point, then, everything can be in the story. The other thing that, I did was, I wanted to, like Barbara Tuchman did in Bible and Sword, is I was, trying to keep out all the extra stuff. And the way you do that is in the way that you ask the question. And for me, I said, how did the Navy, the least likely branch of service in the U.S. military, create, a land-focused commando unit? And by stating the question that way, I was able to, keep out all of the NSW's maritime history, stuff that's fascinating, but also stuff that's not going to take me toward a destination. And it just, that's how I focused it, I suppose. Well, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it I didn't come up with these ideas on my own. I did this by, thinking deeply about what other people had done. If that makes sense.
Well,
you broke up. You there?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And when you said that, they're like yep. Sorry, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay. No, your chapters are really like a book within the book, man. So that makes sense. That's kind of how you structured it. I wanted to ask you this, and this might make you laugh, but Colonel Evans Carlson, he kind of comes off as being a bit of an idiot in the book.
No, he's go ahead.
So my question was like a contrarian point of view almost. In hindsight, was there wisdom with his obsession with China?
Oh, I haven't thought about that. First of all, let me address the scurrilous, insult that you just hurled at me. I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't think Evans Carlson is an idiot. I don't. Writing a book like this, you have to make judgments about characters. And it's really hard to do. Like if you place Evans Carlson's record next to mine, you would say, what the hell is this, does this kid have to say about Evans Carlson? He couldn't even hold Evans Carlson's water. And it's true. I mean, Evans Carlson has done far more for the country than I will ever do. That said, you have to, if you're going to write about people, you have to decide that you have you've got a voice, and you have you have to have the authority and the confidence to be able to weigh and measure the contribution of these individuals. And the only way that you can do that is by having more background than they could have possibly had. You have to have more more context than they have. And the only way you can do that is by having someone's whole life sort of laid out before you.
Yeah.
And that's what you do as a historian or a writer of history. You've got to take the person's life, their impact, and make critical judgments about it. And Evans Carlson, he is a very probably the second weirdest guy that I wrote about in the book. And just because somebody's weird doesn't mean you're allowed to like them or dislike them. You find yourself liking and disliking characters that you're writing about. You don't want to telegraph that to your reader. You want to always be generous with your assessments of their actions. You don't know what it was like. I mean, you're doing the best you can with the available information that you have, but I don't know what it's like to command 200 Marines on an island that you seem to think is being surrounded.
Yeah.
And you're 2,000 miles from the closest American support. I can't imagine what that pressure is like.
Yeah.
And I mean, the less pressure could break a much stouter person. But he's yes, he in that instance he was a failure. I think he spends the rest of the war trying to redeem that failure, and and in that sense, his service is credible. It's honorable. But like so many of the characters that you write about in the book, whether it's not Darby necessarily, but somebody like John McGee or Yarborough. I mean, these guys, they can't escape their failures. They have to live with them, and they, Carlson's passed over for command. He's never allowed to command troops again after the his long march and or the long patrol in Guadalcanal. And as far as China goes, I mean, I think, he's definitely not the only person in that period who was preoccupied with China. Reading about Evans Carlson, reading about Mary Miles, China was for many Americans in that time, it was almost like the state of Israel. I mean, like the state of Israel is today. I mean, there are Americans who are, they vote on whether or not, or how, based on how a politician, votes or says stuff about, that relationship, the American-Israeli relationship. There were Americans that were alive back then that, they voted the same way. They had their, they were so invested in, proselytizing in China, making China a American protector. That's not the right word, but a sturdy American ally. He wasn't. He definitely wasn't alone. I don't know if I'd give him, all that credit. The credit of foresight, like you said, but yeah, maybe. Maybe.
I'm glad I asked that, because for whatever reason, he just stuck out to me. That whole chapter stuck. Maybe just because of, again, like you had said, we don't know what that pressure is like, and that's just a miserable episode that those guys went through, and. When you had said even the surrender didn't go well, it's like, damn, this guy can't get the break. So,
Yeah. I mean, you can't you have to focus on the critical, event for the story too. Like, I mean, if I had widened the aperture to cover, Carlson's service on Guadalcanal, you're going to get a completely different perspective on who Carlson was. But in that instance, that's the pivotal moment for Carlson as far as this story goes. So when I wrote this book, I wanted each chapter, like I said before, to sort of be its own book. So I wanted each pivotal moment to be surrounded, or to I wanted a battle to show how these units were either created or disbanded, or proved to be indispensable. And so once I decided what battle or operation or incident moved that story forward, then it was really just an effort of trying to figure out which character in that battle or operation or incident was the most consequential to that incident's success or failure. So when chapter 1 is probably I'm not sure this is completely accurate, but it's probably the hardest chapter I wrote. Because it's the first chapter. You're getting your proportions. You're trying to figure out exactly what the book is going to be about. But once I realized that the Marine Corps Raiders were would not have been created without the Navy, and two would not have been disbanded without their failure at Macon, leaving the Navy, dispossessed of, its own commando force. Then all it was just determining who the most important character in that story was, and it's clearly Evans Carlson. And that's who. You just back it up from there. Then now you are able to look at Carlson and, what about Carlson, made him that way? Like what events in his life, shaped him, or, gave him this perception among his peers that he was, like you said, an idiot. I'm not sure he was an idiot, but the reason that I think the reader, is going to get that impression is because so many people at the time, thought that about him, whether it was Merritt Edson or Omar Pfeiffer or Chester Nimitz. I mean, they thought that this guy was really something, and then ultimately he wasn't.
Yeah, I think a couple things here. First of all, if no one is, if anybody's not convinced yet to buy the book, which everybody should buy it and read it, they should check out your podcast with Jocko, because you guys go deep. And Jocko said that it was the best book on the history of the SEALs he's ever read, that's kind of like getting a Pulitzer Prize, I think, in a sense. I mean, that dude reads a lot of books, and to get a prop like that from him is great.
He totally niced me. I couldn't, I had so many questions that I wanted to ask him after the podcast. And, he was so generous and so, kind and effusive with praise and everything like that. I first of all, I was on for, I don't know how long we recorded, 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
So when I left, I was, physically exhausted. You don't realize like how, focused and, tense your body is when you're talking about this stuff. And yeah, when I left, he shows me out of his studio and everything. I was just kind of a zombie. I forgot to ask him everything I wanted to ask him. So, but yeah, he couldn't have been nicer. Couldn't have been kinder.
Yeah, I definitely imagine he could be intimidating. Well, I know you got to run, but before you do, man, I wanted to get. You're a historian. I wanted to get a few book recommendations from you. Wanted to see if you had a favorite book on ancient warfare. If you had a favorite book on World War I, you'd kind of already touched on that, but wondering if there's any others. And then the Korean War is something that I've been kind of interested in, and I don't really know a whole lot about it. The only book I have on it is, and I haven't read it yet, is The Korean War, by Bruce Cummings. So if you had any book recommendations that you could throw out there for those subjects, I would absolutely love that.
Trying to think what recent ones I've read. The as far as ancient warfare goes, I don't know if you call it ancient, but it was fascinating to me was the Conquest of the Incas. It was a book recommended to me by Bob Schultz, who was a former commander of Naval Special Warfare Group 2, I think.
Yeah.
And not a book that I would have read. Definitely out of my wheelhouse. But since I've finished writing this book, I've been toying around with ideas for other things. And the one thing that I don't want to read about is American military history. I've spent the last 10 years of my life reading nothing about it. But
No kidding.
yeah. So I need a break. Just need a breather. So The Conquest of the Incas by John Hemming, I think is his name. Okay. It's still in print. It was written, I think, in the 70s, I want to say, by an archaeologist. And it traces the conquistadors landing in what is now Peru, and essentially the 30 to 40 year conquest that it takes to conquer the Incas. And it is it's fascinating. It's the different parts in the book, you find yourself rooting for both sides of the war. You want these Spaniards who they're hanging everything out there. They're thousands of miles from home. Their fortunes they've risked, their lives they've risked on this conquest, and you want them in some ways to succeed, but in other ways these conquistadors are complete monsters, and you want the Incas to finally get it together and kick these these guys out. Anyway, it's great. So it takes it all the way up to the turn of the century, where they find the lost city of Vilcabamba. Anyway, that's a good book. As far as First World War books, it's not a First World War book, but it was I thought really informative about that period, about the pre-war period. And I think the First World War and the period preceding the First World War, that's like you, I think that's a period that's always really attracted me. When I started thinking about writing a book, I was completely preoccupied with thinking about stories from that period.
Yes.
Anyway, so for the one that I recently read was King Leopold's Ghost, about King Leopold of Belgium and his essentially conquest or rape of the Congo. And this is a book that that's been on my radar for probably 15 years. I've wanted to read it for at least that long. I've never been able to find the time, or and I finally after this book was over, I finally had nothing but time to read, and it's a fascinating book.
Wow.
What was the other one?
Korean War. Halberstam's Coldest Winter, I think is excellent. The problem with good Korean War histories is that they kind of close down after 52, or really towards the tail end of 51. I mean, after that it becomes a sort of like a First World War type slog. Yeah, there's not major troop movements after that, and the combat just becomes incredibly depressing. Yeah, I mean, not that combat isn't always depressing. I mean, but I get what you mean, though.
Yeah, and how Halberstam takes you, his portrait, his personality, or character descriptions, it's really good. I mean, if you want to get a sense of the entire war, I think that's as good a book as you're going to find on just general overview. Yeah. I read that at least 3 times when I was trying to get the context for all of my Korean War chapters, just to have that chronology just sort of in the back of your head. That was helpful.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the recommendations, and I appreciate you being on, Ben. Again, everybody should go check out the book. Definitely worth it. I picked mine up at Barnes & Noble, but I'm sure you can get it everywhere online and independent stores. People would be crazy to not have this book. So, Ben, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. All right. Again, thank you, Ben, for being on the show. And everyone, please check out this book, By Water, Beneath the Walls, The Rise of the Navy SEALs by Benjamin H. Milligan. Great episode. While I was thinking about it before and after, I think Ben's really the second Navy SEAL I've ever really talked to in my life, which is kind of cool. They're a cool group of guys, very interesting work that they do, obviously. Follow Ben on social media. He's on Instagram. I'm going to link everything. You can get signed copies of this book. I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes. You can go to our website, bookbrilliant.com. You're going to find a whole lot of stuff there. Every book that we referenced, you will be able to find on our website. You'll be able to see the image of the book, click on it, purchase it. And we really make it easy for you to get book recommendations from brilliant people, which is the whole idea of what this website was founded on. So, again, thank you for listening. Check Benjamin out on social media. Get the book. Please follow us on social media. The links for everything that you need are below. And again, thank you, Ben, for coming on the show.